Hi, I'm Mina.
And I'm Yules.
Thanks for tuning in to Artificially Informed.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we have strapped in for what might be one of the most intellectually jarring rides we have ever taken through the news cycle.
I think that's putting it lightly.
We've gone through a stack of information that covers, and this is no exaggeration, about 8,000 years of human history.
Right. From the moment our ancestors first started, thinking mathematically all the way to the very edge of physics.
The edge where the fabric of reality itself just sort of dissolves at the quantum level.
It really is an immersion into extremes because while our minds are trying to grapple with prehistoric cognition and the nature of time, we simultaneously have to navigate these immediate high-friction geopolitical crises.
And they are defining the modern world right now.
Exactly. We're talking intense diplomatic standoffs over the conflict in Ukraine, an escalating naval blockade ordered by the United States around Venezuela, and the profoundly fragile state of food security in the Gaza Strip.
So our mission today is complex. We have to blend this macro view of staggering scientific breakthroughs that are fundamentally reshaping our world.
And our minds.
And our minds, yes.
Yeah.
Like the discovery of a massive, hot geological blob moving toward New York City. We have to blend that with the micro view of these global friction points that demand our immediate attention.
And then there's the technological debate that sits right in the middle of all of this.
The big one is our growing reliance on tools like generative artificial intelligence actually damaging our foundational critical thinking skills?
Are we potentially undoing 8,000 years of intellectual progress? It's a deep dive that really asks a fundamental question of sustainability.
But not just political or environmental sustainability.
No, cognitive sustainability. Is the modern human mind, bolstered by all this incredible technology, prepared to handle the ancient, slow-moving tectonic forces of both the earth beneath us and the high-velocity political conflict all around us?
We're looking for the connection between ancient truths and future challenges. It's a lot to unpack.
It is. So where do we start?
Okay, let's start with a mental shift. So enormous, it almost requires a moment to just reset your brain. We're starting 8,000 years ago.
Not in a lab, not in a library.
No, in northern Mesopotamia, during what's known as the Holofian culture, roughly 6,200 to 5,500 BCE. Archaeologists there have made a discovery that completely rewrites the timeline of human intellect.
And specifically mathematics. What's so fascinating here is that researchers found the first concrete evidence of sophisticated mathematical thinking. But this predates the formal invention of writing.
Or any numbers we would recognize.
Right, any recognizable numerical systems at all. We usually assume that, written language allows for abstract thought and then mathematical structure follows from that.
But the Holofian culture seemed to have flipped that entire script.
They really did. The evidence is just stunning because it's embedded entirely in their artistic output.
In their pottery designs.
Exactly. And this wasn't just some pretty casual decoration. The intricate motifs on this pottery were governed by these deep-seated, consistent principles of symmetry and numerical sequences.
Which implies a shared understanding across the whole society.
A shared, understood, quantitative cognition.
So what did they actually find? What were these patterns?
Well, when researchers painstakingly analyzed the designs, the floral motifs, the geometrics, the way the borders were constructed, they consistently found arrangements based on geometric progressions.
So like mathematical series.
Precisely. We're talking about components arranged in precise counts, like 4, 8, 16, and even 64 petals or discrete points on a design.
Wow.
To replicate that specific level of symmetry and precision, not just on one pot, but consistently across thousands of vessels over centuries, that demands an innate, structured, quantitative mindset.
It demands an understanding of doubling, of multiplication, of division.
But without the symbols to represent them.
So what does this all mean for how mathematics was born? If they weren't sitting around writing equations on tablets, where did this framework come from?
The analysis points firmly to practical necessity. It was about their societal structure.
So not abstract thought for its own sake.
No, this quantitative cognition was likely rooted in highly practical, day-to-day needs related to agriculture. These were early farming societies dealing with immense organizational challenges.
Like sharing resources.
Exactly. Think about the challenge of collective crop distribution or, equitable resource sharing. How do you divide harvested grain among different families or clans fairly?
If you need to divide a communal field, for instance, into equal shares for 4 families, and then each of those shares needs to be subdivided equally again.
then using radial symmetry and consistent, recognizable patterns becomes the only way to enforce that equity. It's the only way to get agreement among people who don't share a written code.
So the pottery wasn't just decorative, it was a visible, universally recognized symbol of applied mathematical structure.
And fairness. The aha moment here is that artistry wasn't just a byproduct of early human culture, it was a profound precursor to abstract mathematical thought.
Mathematics wasn't born out of purely abstract logic alone.
It was born out of necessity and then refined by an appreciation for reproducible beauty and structure. It just pushes the origin of mathematics back dramatically.
It connects it directly to our cognitive evolution, showing our capacity for complex thought long before we had formal scripts. The ability to see patterns, symmetry, relationships, that's one of humanity's earliest and most fundamental intellectual achievement.
And that leads us perfectly to the complete opposite end of the spectrum of time and cognition.
Hard pivot.
A very hard pivot. Speaking of things that challenge our understanding of reality, we have to swing from ancient Mesopotamian pottery right over to the mind-bending world of modern quantum physics.
Specifically, the delayed choice quantum eraser experiment.
This is where things get really strange.
This is where time and causality seem to bend. We are leaving the world of fixed pottery patterns and entering the world of probability. This experiment reinforces the particle-wave duality concept, but it does something else.
Something truly strange that seems to just break our classical understanding of how the universe is supposed to work.
Explain it for us.
It suggests that the act of measurement taken now can influence the outcome of quantum events, even after those events have already occurred.
Okay, I have to stop you there because that is the core paradox. I want to make sure everyone gets this.
Please do. It's a lot to wrap your head around.
Imagine a particle has to choose a fork in the road 2 seconds ago, in the past.
Right.
If we decide today not to observe which path it took, it behaved like a wave in the past, meaning it took both forks simultaneously.
Correct. The wave-like behavior.
But if we decide today to observe its path, it suddenly collapses into a particle, meaning it chose only one fork 2 seconds ago.
The measurement we make now seems to determine the path the particle took in the past.
It's fundamentally challenging our deterministic, fixed view of the universe.
It is. The implication for reality is profound. It suggests that reality isn't fixed or fully determined until an observer consciousness interacts with it.
So we're not just passive bystanders looking at the universe.
We are actively crucial in determining the quantum system's state. We are participating in its construction moment by moment, collapsing these probability waves into a fixed reality.
And if time and causality are that fluid at the quantum level, it forces us to reconsider the nature of existence itself.
We're nowhere near figuring out how to exploit this for, actual time travel, but it does mean that at the most foundational level of reality, time is perhaps not the rigid one-way street we assume it is.
It's hard to think about time being unstable. But let's talk about instability at a scale we can actually feel. The slow, tectonic instability of the ground beneath us.
A perfect transition from the instability of quantum reality to the much slower but equally massive instability of deep Earth geology.
Let's discuss the Northern Appalachian Anomaly, or the NWA.
This is a massive underground formation of, anomalously hot rock situated deep beneath the Appalachian Mountains in the eastern United States.
And the headline that really grabbed my attention was its trajectory.
Yes, it's moving. Slowly but certainly toward the metropolitan area of New York City.
Okay, when we say hot blob, we're talking about a pretty significant geophysical phenomena.
A very significant one. Thankfully, its migration is incredibly slow.
Glacial.
Glacial is the right word. It's estimated at only about 12 miles per million years. So, put away your emergency earthquake kit for the immediate future, New Yorkers.
Right. But the scale of the process is what truly matters, and the depth of its history.
Geologists believe this hot blob is a remnant from a truly ancient event, the breakup of the supercontinent Pangaea.
Wow.
Roughly 80 million years ago. Specifically, when Greenland physically separated from North America, the residual heat from that event is still driving activity today.
That connects the geology under New York City to something that happened 80 million years ago. It's just mind-boggling. But how did geologists even confirm that this is a hot blob and not just, say, denser ordinary rock? How do they track this invisible anomaly?
They use the sophisticated technology called seismic tomography,
which is like a CT scan for the Earth.
It's essentially like an MRI or a CT scan for the Earth's interior, exactly. Researchers measure how fast seismic waves, often from distant earthquakes, move through the interior.
And the waves slow down in hotter material.
They slow down significantly when they hit hot, less dense, and more buoyant material. The NWA shows an unmistakable signature of abnormally hot, weak rock deep in the mantle.
So why does this ancient heat signature, moving this slowly, matter to us today, particularly in a place like New York City, which isn't on a major fault line?
Because that lingering heat and the resulting buoyancy influence long-term regional effects. For one, the continual, very slow uplift of the Appalachian Mountains themselves.
Okay.
But more critically for populous areas, this shifting, less stable material in the mantle can locally increase stress and fault slippage in the upper crust over millennia.
So even if it's not going to erupt, which the sources are very clear about, it will not.
Right, no eruption threat.
It introduces variables.
Yeah.
It could be a sorts of minor localized seismic events that complex urban infrastructure just isn't universally built for.
And that's the key. This isn't about imminent danger. It's a reminder that the world beneath our foundations needs constant, advanced monitoring.
It underscores the critical need for comprehensive geological surveys beneath every major city, especially those not typically associated with high seismic risk.
It just reinforces the idea that the world beneath our cities is anything but static. And understanding these deep, slow-moving forces is essential for long-term safety and resilience.
Moving from the deep Earth to deep space, the American Space Agency, NASA, which is the National Aeronautics and Space Administration,
Right.
is having its Perseverance rover give us some incredible insight into planetary weathering on Mars.
The rover is currently investigating the Martian surface in a place called the Honeyguide region, and it's focusing specifically on these enormous surface features called megaripples.
These sound big.
They are colossal sand formations. Some are up to 2 meters high, so over 6 feet. They're primarily sculpted by wind, acting much like desert dunes here on Earth, but on this vast planetary scale.
I always think of Mars as static, a cold, dead planet. But the images show this incredibly dynamic surface, shaped by wind, dust, and, historically, water.
That's the focus of this investigation. Understanding the interactions between the wind, the history of water on the planet, and how dust gets transported. And this isn't just academic.
Right, it has practical implications for future missions.
Absolutely. For humanity's long-term goals of establishing a permanent presence on Mars, this data is crucial for mission planning.
How so, exactly?
While understanding the soil chemistry, the prevailing wind patterns, how the surface features change, that's all directly relevant to mobility for our first Martian pioneers. Can the rovers even traverse these megaripples easily?
And also for finding resources.
Vital for resource extraction, specifically for finding and processing water ice that might be hidden just beneath the surface. We need to know what we're drilling into.
From our planetary neighborhood to the very edge of stellar creation, astronomers may have just spotted something entirely new and spectacular.
The first ever superkilonova.
Which sounds impressive.
It is a spectacular event. A regular kilonova is a massive explosion that results from the merger of two neutron stars.
So what makes this one super?
The super prefix implies this is an event far more powerful than what we previously understood these mergers could produce. It suggests either the original stars were much larger, or there was some unique interaction dynamic we've never seen before.
And the scientific importance goes way beyond just watching a Big Bang through a telescope. Why is this so critical for physicists?
Because these events are the universe's ultimate foundries. They provide critical data points for understanding fundamental processes like stellar evolution.
They also generate gravitational waves, right?
They're the primary generators of gravitational waves that our instruments like LIGO can detect. And critically, they are believed to be the primary cosmic mechanism for the formation of the heaviest elements in the universe.
You mean things like gold and platinum?
Exactly. The vast majority of the heavy elements we cherish on Earth, the gold in your jewelry, the platinum in your electronics, they are believed to have been forged in the extreme conditions of neutron star mergers, just like this one.
So spotting a superkilonova gives us a new benchmark for how efficient and violent these creation events can be.
It really does.
Shifting gears now to the space economy and our own terrestrial infrastructure, NASA is proving that space missions are free to roam, much like a cell phone.
And NASA isn't treating this as a one-off tech demo. They are making a formal long-term commitment. The plan is to procure commercial satellite relay services by 2031.
That signals a fundamental shift in how space agencies will operate.
It's all about leveraging the rapid growth and investment in the private sector for routine operations.
And as the commercial space economy matures, it's also facing some very terrestrial problems.
Namely, trash.
Insurance against space trash. We're now seeing a partnership between Odin Space and Arcasys, offering specialized insurance for satellites against space debris collisions.
It's the ultimate sign of a maturing market, isn't it? When you need dedicated collision insurance just to operate in low Earth orbit.
The space debris problem is accelerating. Tens of thousands of tracked objects, millions of tiny untracked ones.
All moving at orbital velocities. The economic solution is now manifesting in these specialized finance and risk mitigation partnerships. It had to happen eventually.
We transition now from the cosmic scale of superkilonovas to the explosive Earth-based growth of artificial intelligence.
And nowhere is that growth more visible than in entertainment and popular culture.
Let's start with the ultimate meta development. A reality TV show called Non-Player Combat has introduced an AI host.
This fusion of AI and entertainment is just rapidly reshaping creative fields and how consumers interact with them. A UK-based studio is behind this.
So it's not just a robot reading a script.
No, they're leveraging large language models and real-time data analysis to create a digital host that is much more dynamic.
The promise is that this digital host not only supports the narrative managing contestant decisions, commenting on the action, but also potentially interacts with viewers in real time.
Right, based on social media feedback, making the experience dynamic and unique for every airing.
And this isn't just some isolated trend. It really reflects the total dominance of AI in the cultural discussion right now.
Absolutely. Time magazine honored the architects of artificial intelligence as Person of the Year for 2025.
Which really underscores the undeniable significant societal impact AI has had this year alone. It's moved from an academic curiosity to a central driver of the global economy and culture.
And AI is moving beyond the screen and into retail in a major way, particularly in the most ambitious global markets.
Beijing, China, has opened a new consumer robot shopping center. And from the reports, it is already a bustling hub of activity.
And we're not talking about simple automation like the self-checkout lines we're used to.
No, these are much more integrated.
These consumer robots are highly integrated into the entire customer journey. They assist with finding specific products, managing complex mobile payments, and crucially, providing personalized shopping recommendations.
Based on your past purchases and real-time inventory.
Exactly. The implication here is a complete redefinition of retail strategy. It optimizes everything. Beijing is explicitly positioning itself at the forefront of this tech-driven retail revolution.
They're setting a global precedent for how stores will interact with customers in the next decade.
And China's ambition doesn't stop at shopping bots. They are locked in a serious, state-backed humanoid arms race.
Right, Chinese startups are debuting innovative humanoid robots targeted at commonplace environments.
Stores, offices, factories, they're aiming for mass production.
Look at the examples cited in the reports. Noetix Robotics Hobbs W1, which is incredibly lifelike.
It boasts sophisticated components like 6 degrees of freedom hands for complex manipulation and even emotional recognition capabilities using its cameras.
Then there's Limex Dynamics Tron 2, which is a versatile bipedal robot designed for stability and movement in cluttered, uneven environments.
These companies are focused entirely on practicality and affordability. The goal is to make these humanoids commonplace across various sectors very quickly.
It's like the mass adoption of industrial robotics decades ago, but for general human-centric environments.
It just highlights China's serious global ambition to lead in the humanoid robotics arena.
This explosion of generative AI and robotics brings us to a really profound philosophical and cognitive question.
One we have to address. How does all this technology affect human connection and, more importantly, human thinking?
Let's start with the big thinkers leading the charge. Yann LeCun.
One of the acknowledged godfathers of AI and the former chief AI scientist at Meta.
He's confirmed the launch of his new startup, and it's focused entirely on what he calls world models.
This is a significant venture. It's reportedly targeting a colossal $3.5 billion valuation and seeking $500 million in investments.
So can you break down what a world model is? Why is it the future of fundamental AI advancement?
A world model aims to move AI beyond simple pattern generation, like just completing a sentence or generating a static image.
Okay.
It focuses on building a genuinely context-aware, predictive AI based on vast multimodal datasets. So instead of just knowing what is, it seeks to understand the underlying physics and causality of the world.
So it can accurately predict what will happen if an action is taken.
Exactly. LeCun's departure from a social media giant like Meta and his focus shift signals a major trend.
It shows where the big foundational money and intellectual effort are flowing.
Away from mere engagement algorithms and toward true simulation and predictive understanding,
We're also seeing AI deeply penetrating the most sensitive areas of our social behavior,
like dating.
especially dating. An app in San Francisco called Known is using voice AI to facilitate and streamline in-person dates.
And they're claiming an impressive 80% success rate compared to the conventional swipe-based methods.
That sounds incredibly efficient, leveraging AI to eliminate the endless text banter and fatigue of online dating.
But that efficiency seems to come at a cost, at least according to some of the core users.
A recent survey found that Gen Z users, the first generation truly saturated by this tech, are deeply skeptical.
They fear a measurable loss of authentic human interaction when the matching and initial conversation are so hyper-personalized and algorithm streamlined.
If the AI minimizes all the awkward friction and uncertainty, are we losing the spontaneous moments that actually lead to a genuine connection?
It is the core tension of the AI era: efficiency versus authenticity.
And that tension leads directly to the expert warning we flagged at the top of the show: the cognitive cost of generative AI.
Yes. The critical warning coming from leading educational and psychological researchers is that an over-reliance on these generative AI tools,
Whether it's using ChatGPT to write code, or craft a dating profile, or generate ideas for a report,
may lead to a measurable cumulative decline in our critical thinking and creative problem-solving skills.
it's about atrophy, isn't it? If we outsource the effort of structuring a complex argument or synthesizing information to a simple prompt,
We risk diminishing the cognitive muscle required for deep engagement with complex topics.
the human brain learns and strengthens through effortful struggle.
And if AI removes that struggle, we become phenomenal prompt engineers, but maybe poor original thinkers. The critical challenge is balancing AI's enhancement of productivity with the urgent need to maintain those essential intellectual skills.
The skills that took us from Holofian pottery to quantum physics in the first place.
Precisely.
Moving from AI's impact on the individual mind to its impact on corporate power and global security, we have a significant cybersecurity breach involving a major networking player, Cisco.
Cisco alerted hundreds of its customers to a severe zero-day vulnerability in its networking devices,
And this exploit has been linked definitively to a Chinese state-sponsored hacking group known as Salt Typhoon.
which suggests a high degree of sophistication and strategic intent. The scope of the victims shows the strategic importance of the targets.
These weren't just random users.
No, these were vital infrastructure nodes. Telecommunications firms and educational institutions across the US, South Africa, Italy, and Thailand. This is about deep access into global communications networks.
A classic example of cyber espionage targeting vital digital infrastructure.
Remote attackers gained unauthorized access to critical networking devices, allowing for data exfiltration and persistent surveillance. The U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, SUSA, immediately flagged this with agent warnings.
And they noted that Salt Typhoon is notorious for targeting these kinds of communication networks specifically.
On a related and perhaps even more bizarre note, we have the serious event of targeted signal jamming in Nanjing, China.
So for 6 hours, Nanjing, a city of 10 million residents, experienced a blackout that severely blinded civilian GPS and the Chinese Beidou satellite navigation systems.
The economic impact was instant and severe, a reported 60% drop in ride-hailing orders during that jamming window.
Now that sounds like a catastrophic technical error, not a deliberate action.
Well, the key detail that elevates this to a geopolitical incident is the precision of the jamming,
It was targeted.
exclusively on civilian GNSS frequency bands. Crucially, the military-grade Beidou frequencies were completely unaffected. Analysts suggest the simultaneous targeted disruption could be a deliberate tactical test, a localized deterrent display underscoring the strategic planning behind maintaining China's military navigation capabilities while potentially disrupting opponents' reliance on civilian infrastructure in a conflict.
That is a stark reminder of the digital, silent layer of conflict that underpins modern life.
Absolutely.
Finally, let's wrap this tech section with a look at corporate power shifts, specifically in the semiconductor space,
The Federal Trade Commission, or FTC, cleared a major strategic move. They approved NVIDIA's acquisition of a stake in its rival, Intel,
which strengthens NVIDIA's already dominant position in the semiconductor industry.
the very bedrock of modern AI processing and hardware advancement.
Given that NVIDIA is leading the charge in the chips required for those world models we just discussed, this clearance has huge implications for the global AI hardware market.
It consolidates power and potentially dictates the pace and cost of future AI development worldwide.
This regulatory green light happened alongside news showing broader economic resilience here in the U.S.
Right, specifically a reported uptick in existing home sales, suggesting some market stabilization despite high interest rates and global instability.
That simultaneous progression is a snapshot of the current global economy. Major corporate decisions in high tech are intertwining with traditional economic indicators like housing.
It suggests that capital is continuing to flow into foundational industries, despite all the ongoing geopolitical challenges we're about to dive into.
We turn now to the high-stakes, high-friction world of geopolitics, starting with the complex and ongoing conflict in Ukraine. The pace of diplomacy seems to be intensifying.
Yes, with high-stakes talks scheduled in Florida between U.S. and Russian officials.
And these Florida negotiations follow earlier talks held in Miami.
Right. Those involve the U.S., Ukraine, and European nations. These meetings signal a collective push by Western powers to find a political resolution, but the diplomatic landscape remains intensely polarized.
Let's break down the two opposing positions. From the Russian side, President Vladimir Putin's envoy, Kirill Dmitriev, expressed hope for resolution while also referencing warmongers who he claims are impeding peace.
And Russia's demands remain absolutely firm. They want Ukraine's complete withdrawal from all territories claimed by Moscow and a commitment to perpetual neutrality for Kyiv.
And Putin remains assertive about continuing military operations until those objectives are met.
The Western and Ukrainian positions are equally resolute, which is why the diplomatic impasse is so intense. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was very clear.
He said there's no peace deal unless Ukraine agrees to it.
Exactly. Supporting Kyiv's refusal to cede any territory occupied by Russia. The U.S. is promoting a peace plan that might involve security guarantees, but that core issue of territorial compromise remains a virtually insurmountable obstacle.
And amidst these complex international negotiations, Ukraine is facing some very serious internal challenges that undermine its military position.
Ukraine's military intelligence head, Kirill Budanov, has been strikingly candid. He admitted that their national mobilization drive has failed.
Failed due to internal missteps and a flawed media campaign that didn't motivate potential recruits.
They're currently only recruiting about 30,000 personnel per month.
And what are the consequences of that shortfall?
Well, the shortfall means Ukraine is falling significantly short of the personnel it needs to sustain trench warfare and mount effective counteroffensives.
Which puts immense pressure on the existing units.
High casualty rates, and it necessitates retaining experienced soldiers who desperately need rotation, which further impacts morale.
And while the diplomats talk, the violence continues. Russia hit key civilian infrastructure again.
Ports and a critical bridge in Odessa, Ukraine. It tragically resulted in at least 8 civilian deaths and widespread disruption to water, heating, and electricity services in the middle of a harsh winter.
This constant cycle of diplomacy, then immediate escalation, leads to severe European discontent.
We've seen a prominent member of the European Parliament characterize the financial aid to Ukraine as a bottomless pit,
raising serious alarms about financial sustainability, oversight, and the potential for indefinite dependence on foreign aid.
The EU recently approved a substantial 90 billion Nazis loan, but that critical comment really speaks to the growing political fatigue and the demand for a clear, accountable exit strategy among many member states.
And the diplomatic environment is so fraught that even historical issues are surfacing as political weapons.
We saw the Polish president gift Ukrainian President Zelensky a book that focuses on documented Ukrainian Nazi crimes,
which, regardless of its historical validity, highlights the deep historical tensions that continue to strain that relationship.
At the very time they should be united against external aggression. It shows just how difficult these peace talks are. It's not just the current battlefield, it's the complex, often antagonistic history and internal disagreements within the supporting coalition.
Moving south to Latin America, the U.S. has significantly ratcheted up pressure on Venezuela. President Donald Trump has ordered a naval blockade in the Caribbean.
to monitor and potentially seize 18 Venezuelan oil tankers currently under U.S. sanctions.
The White House justifies this blockade by stating the primary goal is to financially destabilize the Maduro regime, cutting off crucial oil revenue.
Trump has explicitly accused President Nicolas Maduro of financing terrorism through those oil resources, specifically mentioning the Cartel of Suns,
Which is a group within Venezuela's military that the U.S. has categorized as a foreign terrorist organization.
But Venezuela is pushing back, and strongly. President Maduro condemned the blockade as an illegal attempt to colonize Venezuela and opportunistically seize its massive oil wealth.
He drew parallels to past U.S. interventions in the Middle East.
And critically, the Venezuelan Navy has begun actively escorting non-sanctioned tankers en route to Asia and other buyers, which risks a direct confrontation with U.S. naval forces.
The regional tension around this is palpable. We saw Colombia's President Gustavo Petro respond with a remarkably bold statement.
He demanded that the U.S. should return Texas to Venezuela in response to Trump's perceived interest in Venezuelan oil.
That is a highly inflammatory diplomatic response, blending modern conflict with historical claims.
It is a deliberate provocation aimed at polarizing hemispheric support against what they view as U.S. economic aggression.
And what's fascinating, and perhaps the complete opposite of what the White House intended, is the effect of this pressure on the Venezuelan populace itself.
In what way?
Analysts are observing that these overt U.S. actions, the blockade, the seizure threats, have inadvertently fostered a strong sense of national unity among Venezuelans.
Even among those who dislike Maduro.
Right. It turns external aggression into a catalyst for collective resistance, providing the regime with a popular rallying point against perceived foreign imperialism.
So the U.S. strategy might be achieving financial pressure at the cost of political leverage within Venezuela.
Effectively backfiring on the goal of destabilization by consolidating internal support. That's a critical strategic failure, if true.
It's the risk inherent in highly aggressive external sanctions and military posturing. They often have the paradoxical effect of solidifying national identity.
Shifting to the humanitarian crises currently demanding the world's attention, let's discuss the fragile food security situation in the Gaza Strip.
UN reports from the IPC, that's the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, and the World Health Organization, or WHO, confirmed that famine, which is defined as IPC Phase 5, has been officially averted.
Which is a massive success for the aid effort,
But the use of the word averted is critical because the situation remains incredibly precarious. We are talking about avoiding the worst outcome, not achieving stability.
So what is the current reality on the ground?
A grim statistic shows the scale of the ongoing crisis. 77% of the population, approximately 1.6 million people, still face acute hunger or malnutrition.
Classified as IPC Phase 3 or worse.
And even more tragically, over 100,000 people are currently living in catastrophic conditions.
And the long-term projections are sobering, especially for the most vulnerable.
Yes, nearly 101,000 children are projected to suffer acute malnutrition by mid-October 2026. This includes over 31,000 severe cases that require immediate life-saving intervention.
So while aid meets basic survival needs now, the essential infrastructure, healthcare, water, sanitation remains severely damaged.
Which prevents full recovery and long-term stability.
The United States has also been actively engaged in punitive military action in Syria, launching Operation Hawkeye Strike.
This operation was characterized as a massive punitive strike, hitting over 70 Islamic State, or IS, targets in Syria.
Primarily in Deir ez-Zor, Raqqa, and the Palmyra area.
And this was direct and specific retaliation for a lethal assault that tragically killed 3 Americans, 2 Iowa National Guard members, Sergeant Edgar Brian Torres Tovar and Sergeant William Nathaniel Howard, and a civilian interpreter.
President Trump characterized the strikes as very serious retaliation, emphasizing they were aimed specifically at punishing those responsible, not escalating a broader war.
Though the action was certainly significant in scale, they used a range of advanced assets, including F-15 jets, A-10 aircraft, and Apache helicopters.
And that action is occurring amidst wider regional instability.
Right. Israel also conducted strikes in southern Syria, breaching the defunct buffer zone near the Golan Heights. Syrian officials called this action very dangerous.
Predicting it undermines any efforts toward broader regional stabilization.
And we cannot forget the ongoing crises in Sudan and Yemen, which are both massive humanitarian disasters, often overshadowed by other events.
In Sudan, The UN reported horrifying atrocities.
The Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, killed over 1,000 civilians in the Zamzam refugee camp in April alone. Violence is rapidly escalating in the Kordofan region,
And the U.S. is pushing urgently for a ceasefire.
with officials calling the escalation horrifying and demanding accountability for these war crimes.
And in Yemen, the situation for aid workers continues to deteriorate. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemned the Houthi detention of 10 more UN staff members.
Which brings the total number of local staffers held to 69.
This severely jeopardizes humanitarian aid delivery to millions of people.
With nearly two-thirds of Yemen's population, 19.5 million people, in urgent need of help, the detention of key aid staff represents a critical failure in diplomacy and a direct threat to the lives of those reliant on that assistance.
Let's pivot to policy and law, starting with a seismic proposal for overhauling American health policy, what's being called the Great Vaccine Debate.
The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, or HHS, is planning a significant revision to the childhood vaccination schedule.
And this is not just a minor tweak. This is a major policy shift with huge public health implications.
The proposal is to reduce the number of recommended vaccines and align the schedule more closely with Denmark's model, which traditionally suggests fewer overall shots for children compared to the current U.S. protocol.
And this move is heavily advocated by figures like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and various parent choice groups.
It represents a shift away from a rigid, standardized federal schedule toward empowering individual doctors and parents to make vaccination decisions.
Based on specific patient needs and lower risk assessments.
The tension here is absolutely critical for public health. On one side, you have critics who point to decades of established safety records for the current comprehensive U.S. schedule.
They warn that less centralized guidance may lead to lower overall vaccination rates,
thereby significantly compromising community or herd immunity and leaving vulnerable populations exposed.
and on the other side.
Proponents argue it grants greater parental empowerment, respects individual choice, and allows for more doctor discretion in tailoring medical interventions. It is a classic debate.
Balancing societal well-being versus individual choice and autonomy in healthcare.
Exactly.
Quickly touching on other health developments globally, India has developed an innovative, multidisciplinary treatment for Alzheimer's disease.
It combines traditional Ayurvedic approaches with modern neuroscience and drug therapy, and it's showing promising early results in clinical trials.
And some good news out of Cuba, which is reporting a 7th consecutive week of decline in arboviral disease cases.
That's diseases like dengue and chikungunya. It's due to intensified public health efforts, widespread mosquito vector control, and proactive community engagement.
Conversely, residents in India's Delhi NCR region are dealing with a severe, acute air quality crisis.
Dense fog, combined with an alarming air quality index, or AQI, of 403, which is categorized as severe.
It forced the implementation of emergency measures, with the Aviation Ministry releasing advisories due to hazardous visibility and health risks.
It just underscores the ongoing public health challenges caused by rapid urbanization and environmental factors globally. Air pollution is now one of the leading public health crises in major cities worldwide.
Moving now to high-profile scandals and political accountability. The U.S. Justice Department has begun the release of the massive files related to the late financier and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein,
And the release of hundreds of thousands of files generated immediate frustration,
particularly from Democrats and critics of the administration.
because many pages were heavily blacked out. There were extensive redactions limiting the release of substantial new evidence.
Which led to high-profile figures like Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer accusing the administration of failing to comply fully with legal transparency requirements.
While the redactions were frustrating, the documents do confirm connections to various high-profile individuals, including former President Bill Clinton and singer Michael Jackson.
As well as a newly revealed, potentially embarrassing photo of Prince Andrew lying on laps at Sandringham.
And critically, despite rampant speculation for years, the documents barely mention President Donald Trump,
Who was a focus of much public speculation prior to the release.
This whole situation has led to intense ongoing debates about accountability, the influence of wealth, and the legal limits of government transparency.
Globally, we continue to see leaders being held accountable for their actions. In Pakistan, former Prime Minister Imran Khan and his wife, Bushra Bibi, were sentenced to a further 17 years in prison.
For corruption related to a state gift fraud case, which adds significantly to his existing legal troubles.
In Brazil, the Supreme Court rejected former President Jair Bolsonaro's request for house arrest.
Related to the January 8 insurrection charges, This rejection emphasizes the seriousness of the charges against him for incitement of violence and undermining democratic processes.
And in Argentina, Nobel Peace Laureate Adolfo Pérez Esquivel has called for President Trump to be prosecuted by the International Criminal Court, or ICC.
For alleged human rights violations during his presidency, highlighting ongoing concerns among international human rights leaders regarding accountability for foreign policy decisions and drone warfare.
And the ICC itself is facing severe pressure. The UN has condemned U.S. sanctions against ICC personnel,
Arguing that these actions politicize judicial matters and undermine the court's independence and its ability to investigate alleged violations impartially.
Let's look now at domestic security incidents and legislative fallout. Specifically, the tragic mass shooting at Brown University and MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology.
The investigation has revealed some complex and disturbing details. An autopsy showed the suspect, a former student described by classmates as brilliant but arrogant,
Actually died 2 days before being discovered by authorities in what was initially a manhunt scenario.
The investigation relied heavily on surveillance technology, campus cameras, phone data, but also had an unexpected element of community collaboration.
The Reddit Detective Agency.
The Reddit Detective Agency helped authorities piece together crucial real-time information about the case, which highlights the controversial power of digital crowdsourcing.
The political reaction was swift and decisive. The Trump administration immediately suspended the diversity immigrant visa program.
Also known as the visa lottery, which had been linked to the suspect, who was a former student who entered the country under that program.
This suspension is a significant policy shift. That program grants approximately 50,000 immigrant visas annually based on geographic diversity.
We're also seeing judicial friction concerning immigration in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where Judge Hannah Duggan was convicted of felony obstruction.
For helping an undocumented immigrant evade arrest by federal immigration authorities.
This split verdict conviction has led to legislative Republicans expressing clear intentions to impeach the judge, highlighting the ongoing raw tension between state judicial discretion and federal immigration enforcement.
It's a deep jurisdictional conflict.
And finally, we turn to Germany, which is proposing legislation that would significantly expand the power of its primary intelligence service.
The proposed legislation could grant Germany's Federal Intelligence Service, the BND, unprecedented new offensive powers.
Including the ability to conduct sabotage and cyber attacks abroad and enhance domestic surveillance capabilities like automated facial recognition and comprehensive vehicle tracking of citizens within Germany.
This massive expansion is driven by perceived external threats, particularly from state actors.
But it has already drawn sharp criticism from civil liberties groups and even U.S. officials who argue it undermines free speech and potentially centralizes too much power.
Especially following the BND's controversial designation of the Alternative for Germany, or AfD party, as an extremist threat. Let's wrap up this deep dive by looking at culture, commerce, and competition, the slightly lighter but still crucial developments that shape our daily lives.
Starting with global finance, Brazil closed 2025 with the highest foreign investment inflow in a decade.
That's a massive surge.
Roughly $100 billion flowing in. It reflects growing investor confidence in South America's largest economy. The investment spans crucial sectors like infrastructure, high-end tech, and renewable energy.
On the corporate side, Ford's CEO Jim Farley is grappling publicly with a reported $5 billion operational problem.
Yes, that's the challenge of legacy manufacturing. Even though Ford's sales forecasts are actually showing a year-over-year increase, Farley noted that they're struggling to translate that demand into sufficient profitability.
A massive cost and efficiency gap that must be closed quickly in this competitive automotive industry.
Especially in the transition to electric vehicles.
For individual investors and retirees, significant changes are expected in 2026 for retirement savers.
We're looking at adjustments to contribution limits for 401ks and IRAs due to inflation indexing, which usually results in higher contribution caps.
And more crucially, there are key alterations expected to the required minimum distribution, or RMD, age.
Right, aiming to provide more flexibility for a longer retirement lifespan, allowing assets to grow tax-deferred for longer.
We saw trade wars heat up in Europe, translating into physical protests.
European Union farmers intensified protests against unfair foreign competition, particularly concerning imports from the Mercosur bloc, which includes Brazil and Argentina.
The core of the issue is what they're calling the enormous gap in standards.
EU farmers argue that allowing food products that don't meet their stringent quality, environmental, and animal welfare standards severely impacts their ability to compete.
It's an argument about global fairness versus environmental protectionism.
This led to the French government having to issue warnings against potential Christmas blockades by farmers protesting a contentious mass cattle cull policy.
Moving to entertainment, patch royalty reigns supreme. Kylie Minogue secured the coveted Christmas #1 spot.
Triumphing over the iconic seasonal band Wham with her new single.
The pop queen is still dominant after all these decades. And despite the chart-topping success, she opted for a low-key holiday celebration back home in Australia,
On a less celebratory note, high-profile children's author David Walliams was dropped by his book publisher following serious allegations of inappropriate behavior.
which he has publicly denied.
But it highlights the severe reputational risks and immediate consequences facing public figures in the media age.
Switching to sports, we had a remarkable comeback in American football.
The Seattle Seahawks staged a resilient, dramatic rally to secure a crucial win against the Los Angeles Rams.
In European football, Manchester City manager Pep Guardiola, reflecting on his future, openly told the club to proactively begin preparing for his eventual successor.
Which is a rare, pragmatic, and long-term approach to succession planning in a high-stakes, typically chaotic sport.
In boxing, British heavyweight Anthony Joshua faced YouTube star Jake Paul in Miami.
Many viewed it as a mismatch between professional skill and celebrity hype, and Joshua proved them right.
Securing a dramatic sixth-round knockout.
And the aftermath was brutal for Paul. He was hospitalized with a suspected broken jaw, which really highlights the stark difference in power and conditioning between world-class heavyweights and social media boxing exhibitions.
On the cricket pitch, Australia's Nathan Lyon put England on the brink of defeat in the Ashes series.
And the major debate centered around England's Harry Brook, whose controversial reverse sweep shot resulted in his dismissal at a crucial high-pressure moment.
The question is always risk versus reward in a series like the Ashes. Critics called it a foolish choice under pressure.
Proponents defend the innovative shot's potential to unsettle bowlers and shift momentum. It perfectly encapsulates the tension between traditional and modern techniques in the sport.
And finally, a great barrier-breaking story in motorsports. Teen racer Sky Parker is competing fiercely in the Formula 4 circuit.
Challenging norms and promoting gender equality in a traditionally male-dominated sport by winning races based purely on skill.
And lastly, a quick cultural note for those of you planning trips to Italy. If you plan to visit Rome's Trevi Fountain starting in February, non-residents will face a new Euro fee to get up close.
It's aimed at managing the massive congestion and funding preservation efforts for the historic monument.
And for all the space fans, LEGO has finally gone boldly where they have never gone before.
Launching its first ever Star Trek set, featuring the iconic, highly detailed 3,600-piece USS Enterprise.
A convergence of two great science fiction franchises after decades of waiting.
This has been a truly expansive deep dive. We've pulled threads from the most ancient points of human consciousness to the most challenging geopolitical crises of the day.
We analyzed the earliest evidence of mathematics on ancient Halafian pottery in Mesopotamia.
Moved through the unsettling quantum physics that suggests our observation influences the past.
And identified a massive, slow-moving hot blob beneath the eastern United States.
We've tracked AI taking over reality TV and retail, watched tech giants consolidate power in the chip wars,
and felt the friction of geopolitical crises across the brutal stalemate in Ukraine, the Venezuelan naval blockade that may be backfiring, and the critical humanitarian struggles in Gaza, Sudan, and Yemen.
What stands out to me looking at the entire global picture is this inherent contrast. The world is simultaneously defined by deep, ancient geological and cognitive truths while being rapidly rebuilt by high-velocity technological advancements like generative AI.
And the greatest friction point occurs exactly where those slow-moving tectonic plates of human institute, politics, health policy, our ancient capacity for critical thought meet the high-velocity, algorithm-driven change of digital transformation and global conflict.
It is where human ingenuity is tested by the scale of its own creation.
This leaves us with a provocative final thought, one that bridges the Halafian past and the AI future.
As we rely more and more on AI, whether it's designing our code, recommending partners, or generating our content, we have to ask ourselves, if we outsource our creative and critical thinking to algorithms, will we risk losing the fundamental necessity-driven cognitive skills that allowed the Halafian culture to observe, abstract, and create those sophisticated, beautiful patterns 8,000 years ago?
And what would that loss mean for the future of truly original human discovery? A question worth mulling over. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
enjoying Artificially Informed.
Hit subscribe and share it with a friend.
From the left, the right, and straight from the algorithm.
Thank you.
That's it for today's Artificially Informed.
Nope. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Yeah.
Stay sharp, stay curious. See you next time.